And just a quick note before we begin. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. I'm not a licensed professional, just a parent who's experienced unimaginable loss. This isn't meant to replace help from a therapist, doctor, or other mental health professional. If you're struggling, please reach out to someone qualified. You're not alone. Welcome to Don't Forget to Breathe. I'm your host, Bruce Barker. At the start of this season, I shared that I'd be inviting parents onto the podcast to tell their stories of loss and grief. Today, we start that journey. This is the first episode where a parent speaks in their own words about what they've been through. My first guest is Marnie from Colorado. In this first of 3 episodes, Marnie introduces us to her daughter, Joey. You'll get to know a little bit about their life together before Joey's tragic death. We met at a local coffee house to record, so you might hear the hum of espresso machines and voices and clinking cups in the background. I invite you to listen beyond those noises and into Marnie's heartfelt story.
So my story about grief is more than just the loss of my daughter. Loss of being her caretaker, how I identify when I talk about her tragic life that was beautiful, and she took everyone she met along the journey of her story. Everything in pregnancy was normal, tests, ultrasounds, every step until she was born. I was 30 years old. I knew what to expect being a new mom because I have 4 other daughters. So brought her home from the hospital, her sleeping habits, feeding amounts. I knew all the stuff that was supposed to happen, and I was surprised that those all weren't true for her. She was sleeping a lot, which at the time, I think you can go back and go, oh, hey, that was a red flag. But it was comfortable because I'm like, oh, how relaxing for me with the other girls and stuff. But the feedings were so small. I mean, like it was like an ounce or 2 every 6 hours, which is not a lot. And all that to say that, 9 days later, I had one of my daughters holding her and I was making dinner or doing something. And I kind of looked over and she was like kind of squished up in a little, like, when you have a little kid holding another baby, a little kid, she's kind of squished up. And I thought, God, you're squishing her. She can't breathe. And that, this labored breathing. And I thought, well, that's weird. You know what? Maybe I better call the nurse. I'm not going to get crazy, but I'm going to call the pediatric care line or whatever for my doctor. And in the next 24 hours, nothing would ever be the same from that. I mean, I called, I described what was going on. She had me start counting how many times she was taking a breath, and then after that 30 seconds or whatever, she proceeded to put me on hold. And then she needed to figure out what the doctor said, if we needed to come in. And all this, year 2000, my husband's at work at the time. 3 of the daughters were at home with me. We lived about 3 blocks from the fire station. And while I was on hold, I heard the sirens. I didn't think that the nurse, I didn't know what was happening.
You didn't know they were coming for you.
I didn't know. But she, on my behalf, then she came back from hold to tell me they were coming and they were going to take us to Children's Hospital. And I was like, so everything just slowed down. And I thought, well, how am I doing?
Yeah.
Okay, so I called my mom. She lived fairly close. And I said, can't tell you the story. I don't know the story. You need to come take care of these other kids. And I'm getting in an ambulance with Joey. Like, I'm going to, I'm just sitting on the bed in the ambulance and holding her. And they're putting oxygen on and they're, trying to do all these trying to get an IV started. And, and the drive was chaotic. It was, you're trying to sit still and hold a baby because they didn't have any other way to do this. We get there, we're in a room in the emergency department, and I don't know, maybe my mom called my husband. Anyway, he showed up from work, and all these tests are happening, x-rays and blood tests, and all of a sudden, a cardiologist pulled us out of the room and had us standing in the hallway and he said, your daughter's heart is enlarged. And there's some issues going on. It's like ginormous. We think that we're not exactly sure everything that's going on. We're just standing there looking at him. My husband is now crying. And I ask, well, is she going to be sick forever? Like, what's going to happen? Like I needed to know what were we going to do here? And he said, she'll either live or die, but she will never be sick. That was his exact statement.
Wow.
Exactly. He still works for the hospital at Children's.
Wow.
And I just remember I'm thinking, even if you're a new doctor or you didn't know, I mean, it was just the worst statement to hear, because then that's how I did the rest of her 21 years. As I'm like, oh, well, she's not going to be sick, but what does that mean?
So it's just a black and white, live or
Mm-hmm.
die.
Mm-hmm.
Was this like when from the moment you were on the phone with the nurse, and then the ambulance arriving at the hospital? Is this just some like crazy little dream? Like is it just a swirl, or are you like you're locked in and you know exactly what's going on?
There's definitely moments, right?
Yeah.
So my brain locks in on the one daughter holding her. That moment exactly sticks in my mind, and then the ambulance ride. But there's so many like blackout parts, kind of like life, where you're remembering these impactful moments, but then forgetting everything else. And after they took her to a room in the NICU at Children's to figure out what was next, I think I went into a fight or flight kind of for the rest of the next 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just survived, and my brain shut down to anything else that could hurt me, or I just needed to protect myself, whatever that meant.
Like kind of like a tunnel vision or something.
yeah,
like it's
yeah.
just nothing outside that tunnel.
Yeah. And it was keep her alive.
Yeah.
That is your only job in this world, is to keep your daughter alive. You got to do it,
Which for every parent is the keep your daughter and your son alive. But in your case, you had everything stacked against you. Mm-hmm. So what it sounds like to me is that something is trying to take her life that you're fending off. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, you let them go outside and play and something may or may not happen. And, so we're certainly the protectors as parents, but in your case, that was amped up to like a single solid focus that there is something that's almost actively trying to take her life. And am I getting that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just kind of picturing, the rest of my girls, like, you never know. They're out living their life, you just, because you just try and be in the moment and live life with them. Mm-hmm. But with Joey, we're just continually getting to that next thing and keeping her alive to the next thing and keeping her alive to the next. And there was just moments of like, I just love this instant, another successful surgery or another new whatever. But it was just never enough. And it just never felt safe enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember walking out of the NICU, and I hadn't even called my mom to update her or anything. I just walked through the hospital, and obviously this is way back in 2000. So I was like, I need to call my friend. My friend lives in Nebraska. She's still my best friend. And I go down to the payphone, call her up, and then I lose my mind. I just let it go. I just was bawling, and she's like, "What is?" And she thought that, "What are you talking about? There's an accident?" I'm like, "No accident. Like something's wrong." Like, and she is a NICU nurse in Omaha, and so I'm like, fix it. Help me fix her. Like, I knew nobody else. I knew she couldn't, but there was that like parent, mom to mom kind of, what would you do? What should I do? What's the answers? If I tell you what they say is wrong, can you help me navigate through this? And she got on a flight that next day, flew out. There's still nothing that anyone could do, but I needed advice. And I knew that there was going to be, even if there was something tiny wrong with her, okay, because we still didn't know the whole story. What was going to...
Like what was next?
Yeah.
Like with...
Yeah.
Because that was just day one.
Yeah.
Just within a few hours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so what did that...
It was like, what?
Yep. What did that look like? And you come back to like Financially, what's that going to be like? The other kids, how am I gonna do that and stay at the hospital? Who's now going to jump in that role? It was so confusing. It felt like I was drowning. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Instantly. Because it was harder to research those kind of things. You just know that when you talk to a doctor, or at least you think you do, that they know the answers, that
Yeah.
they're smarter, that they aren't just risking stuff, that they're not going to just try and figure it out, that they know. But it's always been any surgery that she's had moving forward, they have come out of the surgery going, she's just built a little bit different. There was just a little bit. So you look at this mold of how a heart's supposed to look. Hers was just a little bit different when we got in there. Or that artery was a little bit smaller than we thought. Or
Mm.
we couldn't do exactly what we wanted because it wasn't agreeing with us while we were there. I mean, all those things, not so much excuses. To me, it felt like there was excuses. Maybe it was mistakes. Who knows?
Mhm.
But there was always more to the story. And as a parent, getting that word out that you got it. I mean, and it's so easy nowadays. Just do your research. Just get a second opinion. Just advocate for yourself, for your
Yeah.
kid. Because maybe it didn't need to go that way. I think we needed it to be fixed, and we didn't know that there was other resources out there. And I think there gets to be a point where you're just like, do something.
Can I ask you, what was the diagnosis? What did they say? Hey, this is this disease. This is this, what,
Yeah.
like, what is disease, abnormality? Like, what did they say? Like, hey, here's what we have diagnosed is not right with your daughter's body.
So after all the tests, the blood tests, all that stuff, they said that she has a VSD, which is a ventricular septal defect in her lower chamber. The blood gets pumped back into her lungs instead of her body, an aortic stenosis, and a coarctation of the aorta, which is narrowing in the aortic valve that leaves the heart and delivers the oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. It's all associated because she has the VSD, which is the hole between the left and right ventricle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's congenital heart disease. They started off by saying that they could fix the one thing that was easy to fix, right? The VSD seemed to be the easiest thing, which is the hole, pretty big hole
Mm-hmm.
on the bottom chambers of her heart. But they needed her to be stable before before they could do anything. They needed her to be stable enough because she was in a bad place when we got her there. Because she had not been eating right, and she was not breathing right, and she wasn't getting oxygen. So they needed
Yeah.
to put her on some kind of medication, give her a blood transfusion because her blood was getting it just wasn't getting through her body.
Mm.
So they said, well, if you want to reach out and get her baptized, or if you want to have grief people come up, or if you want to have somebody to talk to, we recommend that because we don't know. She's awfully small, and it's really hard to do these kind of surgeries or these procedures on a baby this small
So they're prepared. They're wanting you to prepare for her to die.
to die. hmm
And she's
So
how many days old?
9. Yeah. So we had, I've never had any of my kids baptized. I just
Yeah.
figured when you grow up, you just decide if that's something you want to do. So we decided, yeah, we'll do that. And we had the church chaplain and come in and, just sit by her. And that was surreal. I mean, I can picture being in that room and watching that happen and not thinking it was ever going to happen. Like, that's crazy. We'll just do this as precaution. Like, it's
Yeah.
not going to happen. But in the back of my mind, always thinking that it is probably going to happen in a surgery. That has to be the way that's going to happen.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think it was day 11. So they had to wait 2 days. Then they took her in, open heart surgery, and they place a patch. So, I mean, it was like a thin little patch in there between the two. And that's the only thing they could fix. That's the first, only start. She comes out of surgery, and we had been just waiting in the intensive care, like, waiting room. We finally get the word, everything, she's stable. She's in the NICU. We should just let them do their work, hook her up to stuff, get everything going. She's on oxygen, all that, or still has the breathing tube in, all that stuff. So they're like, why don't you guys go take a break, go down to the cafeteria, get some coffee, whatever, and then come back up in an hour, hour and a half, and you can see her. Okay, so we hadn't seen her yet. We go downstairs, we're like, oh, phew, what a relief, you know? I mean, I can't even tell you how long that surgery was. Don't remember. But we're downstairs, and kid you not, over the loudspeaker, they said, can the parents of Joey come back up to the NICU? And we're like, it was almost like the white paging phone from the airport. You know, you're like, what? And we took the stairs. We were running, right? Running. And we get up there, and it was like to get into the NICU, there was like these doors that you have to go through security because you have to be scrubbed in, right? So we're standing at those doors, and then there's like windows so you can see in, and we're washing our hands, and people are standing around, and there's probably 10 doctors and nurses standing around, and she's in a bucket. It looks like a little bucket. It's not even really a bed. That's how small, these things are. And so we're like, oh, we got to get in. We're her parents and stuff. And so then we walk into that door area. The door shuts behind us, and all of a sudden this lady comes out from the side. I'm trying to get to her, and she grabs me, and she's like, I'm a grief counselor. I need to talk to you and over here. And I'm like, no, I will not talk to you. Do not talk to me. Don't look at me. I was like mad. I'm like yelling at this lady. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And then all of a sudden a nurse turns around and she's sobbing. And I'm like, so what had happened was she went into cardiac arrest. And the doctor yanks open the fresh closed wound of her baby little heart, right? Opens it up and has to like massage her back to life, right? So as we're walking up, they now have it's almost like a protective little patch over that because they cannot close it now because it's so inflamed and swollen, and so they have to leave it open, and you can see her heart beating in there. You're like, look, we're looking at it, and the doctor looks at me and he's like, I don't know what happened. I don't know. She just was trying to give up, and I wasn't going to let that happen, and it's just a shock. And I'm like, what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, all right, yeah. So now what? And he's like, well, we're just going to watch her for the next, 36 hours. This is going to be the rough part. And I'm like, okay.
The rough part.
The rough part, right? So he stood by her bedside for 36 hours, eating crackers, just like he didn't even leave. I mean, maybe there was a spot that he'd go step aside, but the whole time he needed to be there because he didn't know if it was going to happen again. He was so dedicated. And I felt comfortable in that. So maybe that the next night when we finally decided to go sleep, they had a room for parents at the hospital. You go in there, lay down there, like, we'll come get you if anything changes.
Yeah.
If anything's weird, we're like, okay. Finally fell asleep. Of course, doctor comes, knocks on the door. We need you. They're putting her on dialysis. Her kidneys are shutting down. I'm like, what? But why is that? But what does that mean? Like, I don't know. Is that bad? I don't know. He's like, it's we're just helping her. Like, her organs are having a hard time. We're going to just help her. Is that okay that we do that? I'm like, yeah. Okay. Yeah, do that. Let's do that. I mean, do anything. Do anything to keep her alive. And saying those words right now, I don't know if that's the right thing because I did those exact words for 21 years. I'd do anything to keep her alive. Good, bad, whatever. I will do anything. And, it took probably I'm thinking it was around 3 months before we could take her home from the hospital because in between all of that, they finally ended up pulling all that skin over and stapling it closed. And then one of the nurses overgave her some medication and that put her back into a weird rhythm. And then they were like, we don't know. We don't know what we're going to do. Finally, we got stable enough. They put her in a different area of the hospital. Then they noticed that she wasn't going to keep any of her feedings down because she was, for being put under.
Breathing tube?
And the breathing tube. So from having that taken out, had inflamed it so much that it was making it hard for her to keep feedings down. So even if they tried to just not even feed her from the bottle, from the nose, she was gagging so much that she was pushing that out. And so then they went in and they tied the top of her esophagus shut, right? So that nothing would come out. Food would go in, but it wouldn't come back out. It's called a Nissen. Wow. And then they ended up putting a G-tube. So that's how we were feeding her for the next 2 years. Now, she got to an age around 1 that she would start to put things in her mouth and kind of keep them in there. But we'd always have to have that for to keep the nutrients and stuff and keep her, because she was skinny, tiny, skinny baby, just because it was so hard to keep all that stuff. It was a continuous 22-hour-a-day pump that we carried around with us everywhere we went. And I remember people coming up, hey, is that oxygen? Like, clearly it's going right to her stomach. But, I get the questions,
Sure,
so there was some so it was so happy to have her, but it was so overwhelming every day, feeling like I was just keeping her alive. I had a schedule of medications, and I just listed them all over the counters and the cabinets, and it said what time, and I put them in little syringes because they were labeled out into the refrigerator, and when the doctor's appointments, because they were weekly, and then you had the cardiologist appointment besides the regular pediatricians, and then the feeding, and then the food. The specific food was so expensive, and then
They went through the feeding tube?
yeah, yeah. And I forgot that I was still a mom to these other kids. And then turning around, and I'm like, one of my daughters was just like in her room all the time, and she was 9. I'm thinking, she's being good. She was depressed. She literally at age 9 was so depressed that, and I never saw, I don't remember it, just like that part is a blur, but she wasn't coming out of her room, and she wasn't engaging, and I think she was maybe worried, but you don't know how to really talk about it, and we weren't all having those conversations because it was scary. It was scary for everybody. And then she ended up getting put on some medication for depression, and there was just so much else going on, and I was blinded. I had blinders on. I'm going to keep Joey alive.
How many surgeries did she wind up having?
She had 51.
Oh my gosh.
51 surgeries.
So 51 times she's under general anesthesia?
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So over the period of 7,848 days, I had her. She died 5 times, including that first time she went into cardiac arrest. And I witnessed 3 of those with my own eyes in front of me within a period of 5 months at the hospital in Nebraska, in the year 2021. And it was so frightening just to see, if anybody's ever, to watch as because there was different things with all 3 of those that I witnessed happening, where you just don't know where your place is. You're pushing a button because, cardiac arrest, and you push the button on the wall because me and her were the only ones in the room, and then doctors come in, and then a nurse pulls me, and I'm screaming, and the nurse pulls me aside, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, your mom's going to be fine." I'm like, "My mom?" And my daughter's in there. Oh my gosh, nobody expects it to be a kid, a 20-year-old kid. There was so many unanswered questions. So many times I didn't ask questions. If you don't know, find out. If find out what is this? Is this the only medication she can be put on? Hey, it's super toxic for your body to be put on this medication, but it's really the only thing that we have. Mm-hmm. What? Just those things that you don't know. As soon as she turned 18, she didn't necessarily have to have a surgery again until she was 20. Then the decisions were hers, right? Mm. And I'm not mad at her. I'm mad that I wasn't in control anymore. And would it have been different? Would it have been fair? Would it have been what I wanted? I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah. When she turned 18 and then her medical treatment became her choice? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So once she turned 18, obviously that it is, she's an adult, so it is her choice. Mm-hmm. She would ask for help. We still had insurance for her because we had to use a buy-in program along with our own health and, like my own insurance through my work. It was a buy-in program that we had to pay. That way it would pay for all the other things because we're into millions and millions of dollars, right, over the course of her time. So she would take her medication. She wasn't vigilant about getting her regular tests done. And she right before she graduated high school, she had a defibrillator because she had a pacemaker when she was 8. She had her first pacemaker put in, and then they took that out and replaced it with a defibrillator one that would shock her heart into. So it would actually do all that stuff by itself if her heart decided to stop. So it was a little bit more intense. So she knew she had to be on medications. Now, after graduation, she decided to stay with one of my older daughters for, I think it was about 6 months. She wanted to just kind of leave home, right? And see what that felt like. So she went up to Loveland and stayed with her sister. And mind you, her sister's early 30s. And super, like this is the mom of the family, right? And she was very, very protective and, hey, you need to be really good about washing your hands. You need to, you know what I mean? So she was keeping Joey on a really good path. Like, hey, please take care of yourself. Please be careful. Don't stay up late. Get some sleep. So then Joey decided to come back home. And I think, she just wanted to be an adult, but didn't ever know where she was supposed to fit in and how she was supposed to feel and how she was supposed to take over because we were all on her, right? And in a way that we just wanted to help her. We wanted her to survive, right? So we weren't letting her make those mistakes and those choices. So then she came back home for a little while, and then she's like, you know what? I think I'm going to go live with my dad in Nebraska, Iowa. Let me try that for a little bit. And that lasted 3 months. And she's like, maybe I should go back. Maybe I should go to college. Maybe, she wanted to try all these things. But if you don't have the support and somebody letting, and that's bad on me as well, because it's hard to relinquish all of that and go, here's all your pills. Good luck. Like, fill them on your own. Get some help. It's a big thing.
But at the same time, trying to respect that she is trying to do some adulting like anyone that age would try to do. So you mentioned the defibrillator thing. So is she hooked up to something this whole time that when, where she's like, can go here and there and everywhere, or is it just totally remote?
No. Yeah. So, back when she had that implanted, the one that she got when she was 8, it came with like a little phone cradle so we had to have a landline so that you held this thing up and it would take all that data and then it would send it over to the cardiologist at Children's, and then it would say, hey, everything looks good, or hey, there's been some evidence of a couple of disturbances or some irregular beats that we've noticed we need to check. So it was just a magnet that went around there and that would check. But then when she got the defibrillator, she would have to go in and have that checked. I think it was every 3 months, where they would kind of like do that same kind of test. But since it was a defibrillator, it wasn't as intense, right? Where you would have to go in because this thing is inner underneath. And when she got it put in, the doctor's like, hey, she's always had it right on her left side above her heart. And it's big, right? Or it was bigger, where you could almost see the square box, on her little, because everything else was, I don't know, she just had a different frame. Anyway, small frame. And they're like, hey, we do this new thing now where we put it underneath her arm. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, her being a 15-year-old kid, she probably wants it underneath her arm instead of right on top of her chest. So I'm like, yeah, let's do that. Because they asked me, it was not necessarily my choice. I'm like, Joey, is that something you want? And she's like, yeah, under my arm. Perfect. A little box under my arm. Cool. Go in. They do the surgery because they're replacing the battery, giving her to the new machine. And then they come out and they're like, it was all good and stuff. And then we put her arm down after we put it in there and it made the wires come out. And I'm like, what? Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, so we're going to have to put her back under and we're going to have to fix it tomorrow. I'm like, tomorrow? Oh, okay. And so, the whole family's sitting out in the waiting room again. I'm like, hey guys, like, this is what she said. They're going to have to, and they're like, oh, that's awful. Why does this always happen? Right. Things like this. So they take her back in, they hook up all the stuff. They're like, oh, it looks good. We put her arm down. That worked really good. Take her out, do something else with her arm, does it again. And then they come out to us and they're like, again, we're going to do this again. We can actually take her back today, but this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to take it out from underneath her arm, put it back on the top, right? Put it on top, put it back where it was. She'll just have to have it there. I'm like, geez, why was that even an option? Why did what just happened? So she wakes up and she's of course, I mean, she knew in between that she was doing that. I mean, it wasn't like she was out the whole time. But she wakes up and she looks at me. She's like, "We're never doing this again." I'm like this surgery? Or she's like, "No, I'm never having surgery again." I'm like, um, uh, okay. Like, all right. I'm just thinking, does she really know what that means or not? Or, I mean, I get it. I've had surgery and it's awful. And that whole waking up and being sore and all that stuff. And the nurses, and I'm like, okay. Once she fully woke up, she was crying and she's like, "I'm miserable." But this kid never wanted to have pain medicine. She's like, "I don't want that. I hear stories." I mean, even as a little kid, she's like, "I don't want it. I don't like it. I don't like anything to make me feel weird." It was hard to even get her to take Tylenol. They had to almost force her to do that. They have the pump, the morphine pump. And they're like, if she needs it, if she, she's 16. They're like, "If you need it, Joey, push this button." Right.
Right.
And you can't overdose yourself because it won't let you, but you can push it. And then I think it's like every 9-10 minutes, you can, if you need it again, but you won't hurt yourself. You can make yourself comfortable. She's like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And she laid there for hours and she was just crying. And I'm in the bed with her, like laying at the bottom, like scooched into her little, between her knees. And I'm like, "You're fine. You're okay." And I'm trying to like pat her. And I'm like, "Okay, yeah." And she's just crying and she's like, "I hate this. I hate this." I did the worst thing ever. I took that thing and I pushed that button. And Joey looked at me and she's like, "What was that noise?" I'm like, "No, it was nothing." And then maybe 15 minutes later, she finally calmed down and fell asleep. I didn't know that machine records when you do that. And the next day, when the doctors were doing their round, they're like, "Oh, Joey, I see that you needed morphine last night."
No.
And she looks at me and I gave her that wide-eyed, like, "You better, I don't know what's happened. I'll talk to you about this later." And she's like, "Yeah, I guess." She's just kind of like, "Yeah, whatever." And the doctor's like, "How are you feeling now?" And she's like, "Crappy, but I don't, I just want to go home."
Yeah.
And then after they left, I'm like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I knew it wasn't going to hurt you. I just wanted you to, I just felt like I couldn't help you." And I knew that was it. Yeah. So we had that unwritten like look on our face where we were like, "Oh, did that just, yep, I just got in trouble. I did that." There was another surgery after that. It was supposed to be, she was having this weird pain in her chest maybe a year later. And she kept going, "Mom, it feels like something's poking me." Just at the top of her breastbone. She's like, "Something's poking me." I'm like, "What is poking you?" Like, "I don't see anything. It doesn't look like you have anything." Take her to the doctor, children's. I'm like, "She has something hurting her right here." And they're like, "Oh, it's one of those original staples is now worked its way through other open hearts, because she ended up having 5 open heart surgeries. Anyway, ended up working its way and turned around and was poking her." Right. And they're like,
gosh.
"Well, we don't normally do anything because that doesn't normally happen. But if we need to, we can go in there and just make a tiny little cut at the top and just take it out." And I'm like, "Oh." And I look at her, I'm like, "Did you hear that? The doctor just said it's super easy. It's just a little, they give it a little baby cut, like smaller than the size of your, half of your pinky. Cut it and take it out, And I'm always like, "It's okay. They can do that." They take her in, they take it out, I think she goes home the next day. They just want to make sure she was okay. And her body was never really good at recovery, whether it was like her eating habits and the blood flow, and her heart just was never working right. So it wasn't healing. She ended up having to have a wound vac on that would just constantly suck and pull out and try and heal and pull the blood to the surface to kind of like get the blood into that spot.
Wow.
She had to take it to school with her, right? And she had to sit in the back of the class. I mean, it sounds funny now, but because she tried to make a joke of it, and plug it in, and it would make that vacuum sound. And kids in the class, she was 10th grade, and kids in the class would turn around and go, "Joey, could you keep it down back there? Like with the sucking of that, whatever you have hooked up to," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was and I'm sure she was mortified, but she made it funny. Like, "Yeah, I'm just the kid in the back with the, and and then it was just, still wasn't working. We go back in and the doctor looks at this nurse. She was like one of the helpers to the doctors. She looks at it and she's like, and Joey's like, "Don't touch it." She was always like, "Don't touch it." And the doctor's like, "Hang on just one second." And she snipped it and opened it up again. And Joey's like, what? And she had to dig in there because now there was an infection. We're like,
Oh no.
oh, you're joking me. But it was so funny because this little lady was so cute about it. And she had always known Joey for, I don't know, 15 years or whatever. And Joey's like, what? Hey, why did you do that? It was always that joke. So every time after she saw her, she's like, hey, remember you cut me open right there, And I think that if she was any of my other kids or any kid that I know, she never walked around like, why me, crying about it, feeling sorry for herself, feeling.
I think she just developed a resiliency to all of that and then dealt with it with humor.
Oh, yeah.
Mentioned she was just super funny and joking.
She was always super funny, but I think instead of being scared, instead of being made fun of, instead of crying about it, she just would laugh and make jokes. And they were clearly uncomfortable jokes and they were clearly inappropriate stuff, but she would do it because she knew it would get somebody else to look and laugh as opposed to this is me and this is the bad things that are happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, but after that surgery, she did not have another one until January 2021. She did have all those tests, stress tests, which she always hated, despised them because they'd always go harder, push harder. And she's like, I can't do it. She would go out and try and do things like, I'm going to go swimming. And then she'd get out there. We'd take everything to the pool and she'd get in there and she'd swim for about maybe 5 minutes. She's like, oh, I'm exhausted. She would poop out really quick.
Yeah.
So that always made her a little angry. It would make her mad that she was tired, even though she never would say I'm tired. She would just get super mad. So she did have a temper, but there's just so much of her story that gets forgotten when I say my daughter died of congestive heart failure, or she was born with congenital heart defects, or she ended up with a left ventricular assist device. And there was nothing else. Doing research right now, there's nothing. The percentages of having a mechanical heart and living past a year with the medications and stuff, it's like 75%. There was only 8 other people at the University of Colorado here once we got back to Colorado from Nebraska that actually have it. And all of them are 35 to 55. So we had nobody. I mean,
and this is basically an artificial heart.
Yeah. Yep. It just does anything that the left side would do.
Oh.
The right side was failing, but there's no such thing as a right-sided assist that is outside of the hospital. There is one that's in the hospital, but there's not one that's available for you to leave the hospital. That's only in intensive care, and that's only she actually was on one to get her healthy enough to get the left one, if that makes sense. But her lungs were failing. She was going to need a lung and heart transplant. And the chances of that happening, even if you were healthy, it was never a thing they talked about. They were just like, she's going to live or die. She's not sick.
We'll pause here for now. And in parts 2 and 3 of our conversation, Marnie will share more about Joey, her tragic death, and what living with grief has been like for her since that day. After you've listened to these episodes, if something resonates with you and you'd like to share it with Marnie, please reach out to me by email. She's open to connecting, and I'll share that email address right after the show. So until next time, thanks for listening, and please be kind to yourself. One more thing. If you found meaning or comfort in these conversations, consider becoming a supporter of the Don't Forget to Breathe podcast. Your support helps keep these stories alive and makes it possible for others to find hope in their own grief journey. Your dollars go to offset costs associated with this production. You can learn more on the information page for this episode. And my contact email is bruce.barker61@yahoo.com. That's BRUCE.BARKER61@yahoo.com. Until next time.